Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible. All right, on today's episode, we have a very special guest. We've got my man, Dre Evans. So Dre is a Wall Street Journal and international best-selling author. He's on a mission to help others achieve financial freedom and uplift communities through real estate education and leadership. He's a native to Chicago, and his passion stems from his background as a former gang member. He's a top graduate of the U.S. Navy Academy, President Truman Scholar, and MIT Fellow. As a CEO of That's My Property, Dre has 98 doors under management that are valued at over $13 million. He's a host of the Multifamily by the Slice podcast and co-host to the #1 real estate networking meetup in San Diego called Opportunity Knocks. Dre, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. To kick things off, so you are obviously heavy into multifamilies, but you didn't start there. Would you mind sharing some of your story in terms of how you started and what your journey looked like to get into the space?
Grew up in Chicago, and part of that time of growing up, and had a guy that approached me, told me about the Naval Academy, and went to Annapolis. The first year was pretty rough, just learning to adapt, learning how to study, not being used to an environment where I felt safe and people cared about my leadership development. And from there, I majored in engineering, graduated from the Naval Academy. That brought me back out here to San Diego for the first time. And I was getting coffee at a coffee shop with a friend of mine, and he told me about multifamily. Never heard that term before, and that's how I got into it.
Nice. That's amazing. So you mentioned in your bio that you're a former gang member. What was that turning point where you actually listened to, okay, maybe the Naval Academy is the right move for me?
I came back. So I found out about West Point first. My stepdad, who came in about the middle of my life, I think that he probably was being led. One of his superiors was probably a West Point graduate, a Army officer, and he was enlisted for 4 years. So he came home to the crib one day and was like, yo, there's a school called West Point. You all should look into it. And me and my brothers, we said, absolutely not. We're triplets. And we like, no, we're not. We don't want to serve or do anything like that. Nobody in our family served in the military. We brushed it off. My mom did too. But he just kept coming home saying it. And one day we went to an information session about an hour out of Chicago. Met this guy, first gentleman I met that had a PhD and 5 master's degrees. His name was Colonel Banks. Pretty much debunked all the myths that we heard about the service academies. And from there, we started learning more about it. They paid for me to go to West Point's summer leadership seminar. They call it SLS in New York. And the moment I came back, there was a drive-by shooting on me and my best friend, and that was my turning point.
Oh, whoa. Were you targeted, or were you just in the environment?
We were targeted.
Wow. Yeah, so that sounds like a solid wake-up call moment where you're like, oh, this isn't a game. I'm just going to dive in, right?
Yeah, man.
That's amazing. So then let's jump into, so you start having conversations around multifamilies. What made you feel like it was attainable? Because I know for a lot of people, multifamily seems so big. I speak to a lot of people who are in residential, and they'd say, like, because I'm in hotels, and they say, like, oh, man, I'd love to get into that space one day. And it seems like there's this mental block of like, oh, commercial is this like big, scary monster, a giant mountain that's difficult to climb. What was your approach when you actually saw that mountain? What did overcoming that look like, if there was anything to overcome at all?
I didn't think it was possible. That's the thing. I always had that kid from Chicago underdog mentality, and I had never met anyone in my life or in my family rather, that bought an investment property or anything like that. So when he told me about it, I started thinking just that, the purchase price too, being $1 million+. I'm thinking I don't have the ability to do something like that, to take that down. A lot of it was the limiting beliefs. I just didn't think valuable enough or smart enough, or that I had the resources or the money to do it. But the only reason why I pushed forward was my will, my grit. And for me, that had a lot to do with my upbringing in Chicago, and thinking about my mom and my family, my future family. The mindset that if I do this deal, it'll forever change my life and their life. And I just remember constantly thinking about that and reflecting on that, hanging on that, to get me forward when everyone was telling me no and not to do the deal. And I was getting hit with fines and fees throughout escrow, and things were looking bleak. And my broker calling me and telling me, what are you doing? You're going to lose your $20,000 EMD deposit. You're going to lose this deal. And I just kept thinking about that. And I just ignored everybody and stayed true to that grit and just moved forward with the deal.
And did you end up raising capital for that deal?
I didn't, no.
Okay.
That was my first deal. It was a 4-unit, $2 million property in Pacific Beach. I still own it today. And it's been great.
Dude, I love that, man. Did you do that property solo, or like how did
Solo.
you end up taking down that deal? Okay.
I was lucky too and blessed at the same time. I don't know what people believe in, but I believe in God. So my mom, when I left high school and went to college, my mom basically told me in so many words, I don't have a whole lot I can give you. I don't have any money per se or anything to that nature. And I can't necessarily teach you about investing, but just save your money and make sure you're a good steward of managing your money smartly. And so when I went to the Naval Academy, I read a few books on financial literacy and just budgeting and basic stock investing, and I just saved. So when I met Keegan for coffee that fatal day, and he said the words multifamily to me, and he showed me a few things of how to look up properties and where to find them and how to basically evaluate them, I had the savings.
Nice. So you said this was a fourplex.
Mm-hmm.
What did dipping into commercial after that look like?
It was quick. It was really mostly connections more than anything that allowed me to dip into commercial real estate and larger multifamily within a matter of 2-3 months.
Whoa.
Just going to all the various real estate meetup groups in San Diego, being intentional about networking. I think that a lot of people, and you can apply this into business and real estate, of course, but a lot of people go to networking events and the first thing they do is they grab a drink if they don't know anyone for the first time, and that's kind of it. They're just there and they just speak to a bunch of people. Or they go into the second bucket where they've been to a few, they know everybody or a few people, and they'll go grab a drink, grab a snack, and then go with that same group of people that they already know, and they just stay in that circle. And that's just the wrong way to do it. You need to be able to go in there with a mission and a mindset, and essentially almost like speed dating, go around and give each person 2 minutes, 5 minutes, let's just say 5 minutes, and you go around and get everyone's card and their information, and you work the whole room. And in that process, you will meet 3 to 5 individuals that you say are solid, that if this person is in my network or I have a build up genuine relationship with this person, they will take me from step A to step B. They will skyrocket my growth and my development and my ability to learn, or my ability to do a deal, or my ability to raise capital, whatever it is that you're trying to do in real estate or in business. And then you take that and put that in an app or some type of CRM or some type of Excel spreadsheet, and that's how you follow up and push that relationship further. And you just do that tactic on every networking event that you go to. That's how you be intentional about when you go to these events.
Yeah, that's actually how we met. Was a few weeks ago at Rich's meetup.
Yep.
And then I was chatting with somebody and you came up out of the blue and you're like, hey, what's up? How's it going? And I was like, yo, I like this guy, showing up, confident, engaging. And then, it was about 5 minutes. And then, by that point, the meetup was closing out. So, I mean, everything was winding down anyway. But man, I love that tactic, because you definitely see people who, like, they get stuck in one conversation with somebody that they know. And they're in that conversation because it feels comfortable. It feels comfortable. And then they're just checking off that box of, I went to the meetup. But are you actually getting the return that you're looking for? Like, not just the task of checking off the box of going to the meetup, but are you actually getting the outcomes you're looking for, which is finding people that you can work with and build collaborative, meaningful relationships with? Yeah.
I would definitely say being a savage at being uncomfortable will always make you win at everything in life. If you think about it, when you speak, what do people have that people that are not good with public speaking? You know, that moment where you're standing in front of people and you feel anxious, you feel nervous because everyone's looking at you, but it's the same way. It's a tactic. And we got taught this when I had my speaking coach. If I stand in front of a room or in front of an audience, and for the first 10, 15 seconds, all eyes on me and I don't say anything, what happens? You're thinking in your mind that it's uncomfortable, but the other part about it is it heightens your words, because now everyone is waiting to hear, what is Dre going to say next? Because I haven't spoken to you in 10 to 15 seconds. I'm literally just looking at you. So the first thing that comes out of your mouth, people are going to hang on your every word. It's also a tactic that will make everybody in the room shut up and stop what they're doing, because the room is quiet and everyone's like, what is he going to say? It's the same way. So being uncomfortable in speaking in connections when you're trying to accomplish a goal, anything you're trying to do, being a master at being able to flourish in uncomfortability is really like a key to life.
100%. That's like Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way.
Obstacle is the Way.
Such a good book. I was actually reading a study the other day also that talks about how there's a part of our brain, and scientists are just now realizing it, because it's they've done some studies that they hadn't done before, and effectively they discover that this part of your brain is the part that when you face adversity and discomfort, it wants to push through. So it's that kind of like that aggression that you feel, like that positive aggression of like, no, I'm going to plow forward and do this thing that's uncomfortable. And what they found is that the more frequently you exercise this part of your brain, the bigger and stronger it gets. So even if you're doing something like, let's say, taking cold showers, or going to the gym when you don't want to, or eating healthy when you don't want to, that actually exercises a muscle in your brain, quote unquote muscle. I'm air quoting for people who can't see that. It exercises the part of your brain that enables you to do things that you don't want to do, which enables you to apply that to other areas of your life. So when you know you need to work, or you know you need to do something related to your job that you don't want to do, it actually makes it easier if you've regularly exercised that part of your brain.
That's right.
It's wild, dude. And then get this. This is the scary kicker. What they found was that when people retire, that part of the brain shrinks dramatically because they're not exercising that part of the brain where they have to get up and go to work and do these other things. And they find that elderly people who lose a lot of brain mass, the majority of their brain mass loss is from that part of the brain because they're not exercising it. So effectively, I mean, I'm the same as you. I believe that we were created, and I think that as part of our creation and engaging with this reality, it is adversity. Like, adversity is integral to our existence. Like, we're literally designed to operate within adversity and to climb these mountains, and it's pushing and climbing those mountains that actually makes us stronger, even if it feels uncomfortable in the moment.
That's right.
Dude, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. I saw you pull up in a pretty sick whip, and I've heard that you have quite an arsenal of cars. I have to ask, what is your favorite car that you drive, and what is your daily driver?
The G-Wagon is my daily driver. You can just haul a lot of stuff in that. It's still pretty quick with the V8. It's comfortable. I'm a big guy, so I really enjoy that. My favorite? That's tough. It's probably going to be the Huracan, or it's going to be with the Lambo, or it's going to be the AMG GT.
Okay.
I think the AMG GT is probably the best of all worlds because the matte gray paint on that and just the longevity of it turns heads. But it has a red top, and it's extremely loud. It's a convertible too. So that car, in terms of comfortability and the way it sounds and the way it looks, it's the best of all worlds. You can drive around the city with that. It still can get up on the highway and be pretty fast. So obviously it's not the best of everything.
Yeah.
Right, but that would be probably my favorite best of all worlds.
I love that. I have a buddy who has one of those, and he let me drive it, and I was blown away by the driving experience. Like, in terms of all of the extra, like the way the seat holds you, and then doesn't it also, like, something about the suspension like shifts while you're driving to like create a more comfortable experience around turns even
it glides. So it's a really weird car in a good way. When you drive it, I've never been in a car because it's so long that when you turn corner, it's almost like it literally glides. It's like surfing or skating on the pavement, on the street. I don't know how that car does that, but it's very, very different.
Yeah.
It feels like it just floats, really. Every time you drive it, compared to other cars, can feel more rugged and aggressive and technical, but that car doesn't, like, not the slightest bit.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. We'll get back into the multifamilies, but I had to ask because I've been thinking about that as I was prepping for this call. I was like, man, I bet he's put a lot of good thought into this. So back to the multifamilies, something else that I've heard you say that I think is really, really interesting and seems different from what I've heard a lot of other people in the space say is that hiring third-party property management enables you to scale.
Right.
Which intuitively makes a ton of sense. You hear a lot of other people in the space who say, okay, you can increase your profit margins when you're managing it yourself because nobody cares about your property the way you do. And then you also get that extra margin because you're the one operating it. And so that ends up being cash flow that you can use to invest in more properties. But in terms of the time allocation and the return on your time, that makes a ton of sense what you're saying around, hey, look, just give that to a property management company so that you can start looking into more properties and acquiring more properties. So the next question that comes up is where that bottleneck lies. And I know a lot of people, their bottleneck lies in the capital raise. So how do you approach that when you're actually like trying to raise capital for these deals?
The problem is I've ran into quite a few people that want to get into real estate and do a deal, but it is going to, unless you come from a very robust network right away, it is initially going to be hard for you to raise capital because you don't have any skin in the game and you don't have a deal to show. I always say the law of the first deal. The person that coined that term is Michael Blank. He has a yellow book called Financial Freedom. He has a podcast as well. He also has a mastermind group. And so for people that want to get into apartment real estate, I don't have any plug or play to him at all. But he's a person that for me, right? We're on this podcast because they want gems that they can go and implement. So Michael Blank and Joe Fairless off the rip in the Jake and Gino community, those three alone, people can take that and listen to this and join those right away and have a mastermind, have a community, have resources, have books that they can delve into. So there's that. You ideally need that deal, like Michael Blank said, with the law of the first deal, because that catapults you to raise capital in addition to the cash flow and the lessons learned and the appreciation that you'll have from every lesson you learn from the first deal. And that's the thing, because imagine speaking to someone about, you're speaking to the returns and you're speaking to raising money for them. And if there's two questions that really they're going to ask you, well, how much are you investing in the deal, skin in the game, or have you done a deal before? Think about it. If you pitch me on trying to give you 50 to 100 grand to invest in an apartment deal and you're saying that you're going to manage this and work on this and you've never bought a multifamily before, why would I give you 50 to 100 grand?
Right.
And I think people sometimes lose sight of that. So the only other way around that is you have to find the deal and then you partner with one or two people that do have that experience, and that gets your foot in the door, because now, repeat the conversation on the phone, you're speaking to a wealthy individual that's going to invest in your deal, and you said, hey, I might not have necessarily the experience where I managed a multifamily property before, but I found this deal and I'm partnered with someone that is experienced in managing and operating and has the connections and resources around multifamily. And now that checks that warm and fuzzy box for an investor, because they can see that you are not only hungry and did the work, but you're partnered with someone that can fulfill the business plan and get it to where it needs to be. Those are the initial immediate steps and requirements that need to take. And I think that a lot of people have the biggest hurdle with when it comes to raising capital. Everything beyond that point is really systems and follow through. Keeping in contact with people, always networking, always following up. Over time, as you do more deals and raise capital, you will learn other tricks to bring in more investors, how to entice people, how to create a sense of urgency through emails, through how you communicate, through the language that you use on the phone. There are certain scripts, just like if you were to cold call or wholesale, or even imagine doing just basic sale training one-on-one, just like trying to sell a car or sell anything at a door. There are some scripts per se and tactics you can use in raising capital, but all that becomes more dialed in, but you have to have that foundation first.
Yeah, it's like back to the who, not how mentality. Mm-hmm. I was just talking to somebody yesterday at Brandon and Chris's meetup.
Okay.
And they were listing off, because we were chatting about hotels, because they're in short-term rentals, and we were chatting about the hotel that we just closed on. And they were basically asking me questions and looking for where their gaps were, and then saying, oh, I need to go and learn those things. And I was like, no, you don't need to learn those things. You just need to find somebody who knows those things. Or if you lack the experience or the credibility, you just need to find somebody who has that credibility, because that's actually how we got into the hotel space. So my partners and I, or a couple of partners, we didn't have any hotel experience, but we had built relationships with people who were in the space. And so we went out hunting for deals. And when we found the right deal, we brought it to a gentleman named Neil, who's an absolute legend. He's an incredible person and an incredible hotelier. And we basically brought the deal to him, and it looked good. So he ended up joining us. And that's how we maintained the momentum to raise capital and do all sorts of things, because we were able to pitch our team as a unit to investors. And a lot of that was off of Neil's credibility.
See?
That's it, man. Is something similar that you did to jump into commercial?
I would say yes, and it was a little bit of both because I had my first deal. I had the 4 unit. And I did it in San Diego, and it was $2 million. So off the gate, I was like, I already did a deal in San Diego. I was instant credibility, you know?
Right, yeah.
So I think that's what pushed me farther, faster, was because of that. In addition to then networking and doing other tactics to also aid in that growth. But out the gate, I had a deal. And you think about it, especially in San Diego, you go to all these meetups, how many people there actually own and did a deal? One, and especially did one in San Diego. It's only a small pocket of people, so it helps.
Yeah. Well, what's your criteria when you're looking for deals?
It's shifting. So it used to be more turnkey or value add apartment buildings, about 2 to 20 units. Now it's shifting where I'm getting more into the ADU space and complete communities, because of just the regulations around it and the favorability to build cheaper, and especially with interest rates too, being able to go in and have a large upside and then you refinance and hold. So I'm finding myself going to a development space, and I never thought that I ever would, but it's still multifamily. At the end of the day, it's just kind of like a different way to do it. So I've been doing that a lot more, and that's more so something that has a single family or a multifamily on a large lot, 5,000 plus square feet, preferably alley access. Maybe if you got something that has garages and stuff you can convert, that's a plus too. Probably going to have some type of RM zoning, and you can build on it, either complete communities or the ADU bonus density program.
Gotcha. That's cool. Are there any like particular neighborhoods or parts of San Diego that you're targeting? I'm
looking throughout the city. And I've always been that way. I like to cast a wide net. I think you're able to consider more deals that way. Of course, there's some people that, for example, they only want to do North Park, or they only want to do a coastal project like PB or OB or Mission Beach. There's merit to that too, but now you really do narrow yourself, because you might have other great opportunities. San Diego is a small mid-city where you can get to everything within 8 to 12 minutes. So I don't see why you can't. You can drive to several properties in a given day. Right. So why not have a bigger net? You could do a deal in South Park. You could do a deal in North Park. You can do a deal in PB, a deal in OB. You can all make it happen. What does the upside for an ADU right now look like compared to the upside of a multifamily in the same market? It's just cheaper to build. You can still rent it out for the same, if you really think about it, right? Mm-hmm. We're in an ADU right now recording. So a 1-bedroom, 22122 ADU, you're still going to charge the same amount of rent that you would for a regular unit that you bought. The only thing is it's your going in costs. Your going in cost is essentially going to be cheaper than what you might do if you buy an existing asset. That's all it really comes down to. The biggest thing for ADUs in any type of development is really what your going in cap rate is, and then looking at what your margin is. And that margin, you ideally want that margin to be between at least 1% to 3%. If you're at 2% to 3%, you're killing it. But that the going in cap rate and that exit cap rate, that exit return on cost, that is the crucial metric when it comes to development and building, and being able to have that spread of 1% to 3%. Because you know that if you go below that, the deal is just not going to work or pencil. The IRR doesn't matter. It's not going to matter what the equity multiple is. It's not going to matter what the cash on cash return is. It's that spread when it comes to building. Compared to existing multifamily, of course, IRR, equity multiple, cash on cash return, those metrics are more what you would consider, but it's not as the same when you look at development. What spread is that? Spread between what exactly? That the spread is between what you pay, that going in cap rate, and what you pay at, right, and then what your return on cost is, that margin between the two when you exit. And when I say exit, that means either you refinancing or you selling, and you want at least 1%, but you should be at 2% to 3%. If you're at 2% to 3%, that's a great deal.
Right. That makes sense. And then, so if you buy, like, let's say you buy a residential asset and it has enough space on it that you can build an ADU, does that later get valued as a commercial asset? Or is it still, like, how does the valuation differ going in and buying it as residential?
That can get a little bit more complicated. I was speaking to some buddies about that too, and some appraisers in terms of like how they will view the property and appraise the property, because I've had it happen to some people where they'll buy something, let's say it's a single family, then they all add several ADUs, and let's say you add 7. Well, is it an 8 unit now?
Right.
Right? Because 5 units or more is commercial, or is it still a single family, but you have these 8 units? Now you can account for the value of those 8 units, of course, and when you sell it or whatever, this is what it appraises as. But in terms of like what the parcel is saying and what it exactly is, it really is in the eye of the beholder and what they quantify it as. Now, do I think that, are there ways per se where you can change it? Yeah, I believe so, but there hasn't been a system yet where it's been completely cookie cutter, where you adding a certain amount of units, so it's just 5 or more units, where you automatically are considered commercial or whatnot. And as you know, that can be very crucial when you start building 5 or more units, because the value is depicted on the NOI, not comps, which is huge, because if you raise the income by $5 for every unit, I mean, you can pretty much in a month or less, you can greatly increase the value of your property compared to in a 2 to 4 unit where it's only still evaluated on comps. It doesn't matter how much you increase in a month, the income, that doesn't mean that you're going to raise the value of the property.
How do you manage that unknown then? You said it's in the eye of the beholder in terms of how the property gets valued.
Having connections on the board and with the appraisers, and being able to also rezone and having your documentation in place and fighting that. I've seen both, but the people that have been able to get the correct valuation would then leverage their connections to make sure it got done correctly.
Okay. And then those valuations, do those end up getting appraised based on like the square footage of the ADUs, or is it like per unit, like they add up, okay, a 1-1 is typically this value and there are 7 of them, so times 7?
Well, there's different ways you appraise a property and evaluate the property. We talked about one way being comps, looking at what the comps in the neighborhood and seeing, okay, based on square footage and how nice the property is in the condition, this is what we estimate this will cost. And then the income approach, the value of a property is the NOI divided by the cap rate. So what's the cap rate in that submarket? Okay, it's 4%, 3%, whatever it is. This is the income. Whatever they calculate the income that all those units produce, divide that by the cap, that's the value. It also depends on the approach that the appraiser takes. I think that in general, like realistically, the appraiser is probably going to, there's estimates too when you build your ADUs in terms of like what it'll be worth and what the value will be. And that's typically, you're probably going to typically evaluate that off the NOI approach. Because if you're underwriting in a spreadsheet, you're not sitting there plugging the spreadsheet comps to see what this about. You're putting in the income, you're finding NOI, because you're projecting, I'm going to build this amount of 1-1s, I'm going to build this amount of 2-1s, I'm going to build this amount of 2-2s, or whatever unit mix that you pick at this amount of square feet. And then once you calculate that, it's easy for you to punch out NOI. It's easy for you to estimate expenses. Just do 35%. Boom. Here's your gross, 35%. You count 5% vacancy, you got your NOI. Done deal. Throw in a cap rate, you can easily pull that, look that up on CoStar or get it from a broker for your area. You already know the value. And that's your driving metric. Back of the napkin, you can quickly find to evaluate what the property will be worth based on like the unit mix that you're trying to do.
And are those the same cap rates as multifamily, or is it a different cap rate?
It'll be the cap rate for the area.
Okay, but
for the submarket.
Okay, but is that like for ADU specifically?
No. It's
multifamily.
The cap rate is the cap rate.
Okay.
So the cap rate is what is for that submarket. So if you're in PB or North Park or whatever, like it's the cap rate for that submarket. You're not gonna say all ADUs are gonna have this cap rate and multifamily is gonna have this cap rate. No, it'll be the same.
Gotcha. Okay. I know when we were looking at hotels, there would be some markets where like it's a different cap depending on the asset class. And I didn't know if it sounds like that it's just like a
Well, because there's no differentiator between ADUs and multifamily. It's the same
right.
thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd love to dive into some of your writing. So you've written multiple books. You wrote a comic. Can you share a bit about those and like what you're trying to achieve with some of those things that you're putting out?
Yeah, the first book was Prove Them Wrong. That was the Wall Street Journal bestseller. That's more so a mindset, self-help motivation book. And then the second one was That's My Property Investments. That was really That's My Property. But me trying to take all the lessons learned from multifamily real estate and providing it into a medium that can help people and give back. And then the third book was what we discussed at the beginning of the show, the first ever Marvel DC style real estate comic book to teach people about the mindset and the procedure and process of taking down a large multifamily property and what they got to do, but just doing it through a different comic form. Some people learn better visually. Even after reading That's My Property, as much as I tried to do to break it down in a way that would be easy for people to understand, some people still might not get it. They still might have complications. They still might have questions. And some people best learn visually. So let me bring that to them.
Yeah. I love that. I got super excited when I saw that you'd put that out because, yeah, like you mentioned, different people learn in different ways, and there's a massive demographic that ingests material easier with a comic format than actually reading through a book.
Yeah.
And those people are just as worth connecting and like educating and getting them into something valuable like real estate as the people who can sit down and read books. Mm-hmm. So that's super, super cool. That's also like what Robert Kiyosaki did when he wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was like one of the first simple to understand books on finances. And then he also came out with that game. I don't remember what the name of the game
board
was.
Game, something like
yeah, board
based,
game. Yeah, where it's like educating people in these different ways. And there's so much value in that. I've seen you go around and do speaking to the youth and stuff. Is that pretty dear to your heart?
Very dear to my heart. I would say that and being an author are the two biggest things I'm passionate about. And that came from just me one day trying to give back to kids and speaking to them. I found out that I loved it. And I have always had a good response to that, being able to just really just feel the room and shift my message. I never come in planned with anything. And just the other day, what was it, Monday, I had another event. And you went in there, and what I thought I was going to talk about, I didn't talk about. You're just right there on the fly. You pivot and adapt, and you give them something different that you know that they need. But that's the beauty of just speaking and learning to adapt and evolve. But I love speaking.
Yeah, and what is that pivot based on? Like, do you open up with questions, or do you just feel the room and see what they respond to?
It could be the demographics. It could be the location. It could be sometimes questions that could be had between whoever invited me or hearing people speak to, that I can get a feel of what they more so want to hear or what they want. And you could be told something from the beginning, but then when you actually see it, it's different. So that's why it shifts, because sometimes people might be a message that's more so geared towards entrepreneurship and business, but it could be another conversation where it's geared towards college and succeeding in college, like it was the other week. Like that was immediately just the topic. So leveraging anything I did with the Naval Academy or MIT or internships or mentorship and leveraging that and giving that to them, because that was the message that needed to carry for them. And sometimes it could be leadership. Sometimes it could be getting off your ass and being resilient in adversity and overcoming. It varies. Sometimes it could be very rugged. Like if I'm speaking in a prison or I'm speaking to youth that are gang members, my conversation is going to be a whole lot raw. And then I'm flipping a switch where now I'm being a lot more aggressive in the way I speak to them, because I have to be, because now I know where their mindset is and I know how to reach them. Obviously, I can't go into a school or I can't go into a certain environment and speak about those things. It varies. For example, even the conversation on Monday, I know I'm going with a little bit more longer explanation based on what you asked. But even on Monday, when the lady asked me for my background and she read my bio and she was like, gang member, and then like their faces started like, what? Like, and so if people have different responses to that, and that's just a perfect example where there in that school, it was more of an elite school, right? And normally I don't do schools like that. Not to say that they don't need help, but it was just a different response. But another place, you wouldn't have got that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it makes sense because you seem to have a very high EQ. and being able to read people. And also you're a very clear communicator. So I can see that being an incredible tool in your tool belt in terms of really delivering value to what people need in that moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. So continuing down that route, because I'm very interested in your style and motivation behind communicating and giving back to people. So you do public speaking, you have a podcast, you have social media, you have a meetup. How do you see those different mediums delivering value to both people and yourself? Is there a lot of overlap when it comes like, okay, I'm giving back to people by talking on social, also I'm maintaining communication with potential investors and things like that? Like, how do you actually view that landscape?
It's all jumbled. It all overlaps. My friends and some of my more influential friends and mentors sometimes get on me about that because they're like, Dre, like you're really just out here. Sometimes there's no method to it. I get it. Sometimes it should be targeted. I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest, because for me, it was always like, I just give value. I get on social. I put posts out that are either real estate. So I'm lifestyle motivation and real estate for my page. So you're giving out stuff that helps people about their mindset, their resilience and leadership, but then you're also in motivation, but then you're also trying to teach them about real estate and business. So it varies, but it's really about what I feel and what's on my mind for that day or that week, and I just give it to them. And if they receive it, they receive it. If they don't, they don't. And that goes with the same thing with speaking. You're going off the room and feeling what they need to hear, and you provide. With the real estate meetup, it was just bringing these speakers. You have all these sponsors. Vet the speakers so that they're higher caliber and give people value. Same thing with the podcast. Same thing with the books. I get no monetary gain from it, absolutely whatsoever. And that's why I say it gets jumbled, and I have like one person on my left shoulder and one person on my right shoulder, because you've got one person saying, yeah, continue to give value, expect nothing in return. But then you've got another group, like a few of my mentors and some of the other closer friends they have, they're like, okay, like give value, but at some point you're missing a lot of opportunity to capitalize on these mediums. And I struggle back and forth with that.
Yeah. No, I totally feel you. I ask because I feel the same way in a lot of senses. So, I mean, you have a much larger following than I do, but even with this podcast, like I exclusively want to have conversations with people that I want to have conversations with. And that's literally all this is. Like my entire strategy for this podcast is like, do I want to have a conversation with this person or not? And sometimes it's about real estate. Sometimes it's about psychedelics. Sometimes it's about whatever it's about. And I've had conversations with people too where they're like, yo, bro, you got to like
niche out.
Like,
you got to narrow this down. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like I get the value in that.
There is some value to that though.
There's a ton of value in it. And I do love real estate. And so like I could have conversations about real estate all day. So fortunately, like it does niche down nicely. But overall, it's like I view it as this podcast, my online presence are all a representation of me. And being authentic in that also has a ton of value for me personally in terms of attracting people that are aligned with what I'm looking for, not necessarily exclusively people who are aligned with whatever structure I'm trying to put out, if that makes sense. But I'm totally with you, man. I see the benefit of both for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Dre, we always wrap up the show with this question. You don't need to define it, but when you hear the word incredible, what comes to mind?
Resilient. I think the most incredible people are resilient.
Is there anybody who comes to mind?
A lot of people come to mind. I'll say my mom, my grandparents, Eric Thomas, David Goggins, Ed Milet, Kobe, Michael Jordan, Derrick Rose, Dwayne Wade, a lot of people. Grant Cardone.
Resilience. We haven't gotten that one yet. Yeah. I dig that a lot. I dig that. And where can people find you?
So I'm Dr. Multifamily, so almost like Dr. Dre Doctor, and then the word multifamily, Dr. Multifamily on all social media platforms. They can also reach me with drmultifamily.com for real estate, or if they want to look into all the books, it's provethemwrongthebook.com. That's provethemwrongthebook.com. Nice.
Awesome. And then you have the meetup.
Got the meetup and turned that over actually recently. So someone else is leading that after doing it for about 2.5 years. And still opportunity knocks. Ramsey is running that. He's a great guy. He's a great operator. He's a great real estate investor. So if people want to still plug into a great real estate meetup, hit up Ramsey Blankenship and he'll take care of you.
Awesome. Good stuff. Dre, thank you so much.
Thank you.